Amber and James had been married for 7 years, and both were in their 30s. James worked for a logistics company, shipping freight all over the country. He loved his job, and his colleagues respected him for his hard work. Amber, on the other hand, owned a small flower store. She had been a florist before her marriage, and James supported her dream of starting her own business. One day, Amber suggested James quit his job to run the store with her, but he wasn't ready to give up his career. Today, Amber announced, "My parents are coming over, and we'll all have dinner together." James nodded, as he genuinely liked her in-laws. The evening was filled with laughter, delicious food, and wine. Toward the end of the evening, as everyone was sipping tea, Amber exclaimed, "Mom, Dad, I have news. We're expecting a baby." There was surprised joy on everyone's faces, and Amber's mom even wept with happiness. But James was the most shocked of all. They had been trying to conceive a child for several years without success. It was a wonderful and exciting surprise. 9 months flew by, and James was beyond happy. He adored his wife and spoiled her, fulfilling all her whims, surprising her with gifts and helping her when she needed it. Finally, the day came, and a beautiful baby girl appeared in their lives. Amber agreed to name her Heather per her husband's wishes. James could not contain his love for his daughter. After work, he would rush home to take over parental duties and give his wife a much-needed rest. Amber even managed to continue to run her flower store without shifting responsibilities to the employees. James made it a tradition to send Amber on vacation every 6 months to a quiet boarding house. There she could relax in nature, take a walk, and enjoy the quiet solitude. When their daughter Heather was 5 years old, Amber found out she was pregnant with their second child. James was ecstatic. After several years of unsuccessful attempts to conceive, during which he fought to spare and even underwent infertility tests, the doctor assured him that everything was fine. So when Amber shared the news and showed him a 2-stripe pregnancy test, Boris was overwhelmed with immense joy. "I hope it will be a boy," Amber smiled. "The most important thing is that the baby is healthy, love," James said, hugging his wife warmly. "I want to relax." Amber gently touched her husband's arm. "Could you book a trip for me for next month?" Even though it was an unplanned vacation at a boarding house, James, overwhelmed with happiness, was willing to do anything for his wife. When Amber returned from her trip with her bust noticeable to the touch, James was back at work in his office when a man walked in. James couldn't help but notice the stranger's attractive appearance and charming facial features, as well as the heart-shaped birthmark on his neck. "Good afternoon, Mr. Williams," the man greeted with a smile as he extended his hand. "My name is John. I was sent here to discuss the details of the contract," James replied, shaking the man's hand. He rarely met his clients in person, as most of them were in other cities. As John was about to leave, he suddenly asked, "Mr. Williams, are you a family man?" "Yes, I have a wife and a daughter." "May I ask why you are interested?" replied James. "I have my reasons." John smirked as he said his goodbyes and walked out. Despite the odd question, James had enjoyed working with John. He was an interesting conversationalist and a competent manager. As the delivery day approached, Amber was anxious, often on edge with her family, and snapping at James over nothing. James tolerated it, knowing it would soon pass, and silently complied with his wife's requests. The disagreement came to a head when James expressed his desire to be present at the birth, but Amber refused. James wondered why he continued to insist, and the argument dragged on into the evening. Closer to night, Amber woke up her husband and informed him that she was in labor and was looking forward to the second child. They had purposely kept the sex of the baby a secret and had already chosen names, Hannah for a girl and Ernest for a boy. The next morning, James received a message from his wife with a photo attached to it, which read, "Congratulations, we have a daughter." James shared the photo with Heather, and they spent some time together admiring the newborn. The next day, James called John and suggested they meet to discuss work issues. Despite the fact that he had the day off, Boris agreed, following the company's customer service policy. They agreed to meet at a coffee shop in a shopping center, where Boris was also picking up some necessary items for his wife and newborn daughter. Upon arriving at the location, James found that John had already arrived and was waiting for him. "Hello, John." They greeted each other as they shook hands. James ordered himself a coffee and pulled a file folder and laptop out of his briefcase. "I see you're shopping," John remarked carelessly. "Yes, my wife gave birth 3 days ago, so I'm packing for them," Boris replied. "I know," John stated, which threw James into confusion. "You know what?" "I know your wife gave birth," John continued, looking intently at James. His gaze radiated unwavering self-confidence. At that moment, John placed his cell phone in front of James, which displayed the same message and picture. "Congratulations, we have a daughter," the messages read, and the picture was identical to the one James had received. Confused and anxious, James asked John why he was being shown this. Fear gripped James. His heart raced and his stomach felt like it was about to vomit. "James, we are both adults, and you should realize the importance of this situation. I don't believe Amber has told you, nor can she, but I want you to know that this baby is mine," John stated with conviction. James rose abruptly from his seat, causing the chair to clatter to the floor. Ignoring the sensation of the floor beneath him, he hurriedly gathered his things and hurried out of the cafe. James raced to the car, ears still ringing and a lump in his throat, and he couldn't imagine how he could confront Olga right now. The thought of infidelity was so foreign to him after years of marriage and unwavering trust. Pulling himself together, he decided not to confront his wife, but perhaps to secretly run a DNA test on their daughter. He couldn't bear to accuse his beloved of betrayal. The day of his daughter's discharge from the hospital came. An overjoyed James arrived with flowers to his wife, who handed him the sleeping newborn. Holding little Hannah in his arms, he couldn't shake off the nagging doubt that she might not be quite his. Back home, James carefully removed his daughter from her hospital diaper, desperately searching her features for any resemblance to himself. His heart squeezed when he realized she looked nothing like him. When he discovered the heart-shaped birthmark on her neck, his worst fears were confirmed. "Amber," he turned to his wife, "can you explain it?" Amber hesitated, but answered weakly, mentioning an alleged family inheritance. James, seeing her unconvincing words, rushed to her in anger and grabbed her firmly by the shoulders. Through tears of surprise, Amber eventually admitted to her affair with John, revealing how their relationship had developed during the vacation James had sent her on, which had led to her pregnancy by him. When Amber learned of her situation, she was overcome with emotion and decided to have an abortion. She was troubled by the idea of deceiving her husband and forcing him to raise someone else's child. However, when James unexpectedly showed interest in having a second child, Amber took it as a sign and decided not to have an abortion. Although her lover asked for a divorce and offered to raise the child together, he was unwilling to accept her first child, and Amber hesitated whether to leave her husband. After a heart-to-heart talk with her husband, James decided to file for divorce himself, leaving their eldest daughter with him and allowing Amber to move in with her lover John. A few years after the divorce, James and his daughter sold their apartment and moved to another city, and Amber went to live with John. Things seemed to go well at first, but as Lily grew older, John's behavior towards her changed. He began to criticize her appearance and disparage her, not understanding the difficulties she faced raising their daughter without his help. Eventually, he left the family without explanation, leaving Amber devastated and alone with a young child. Abandoning her flower store and with no financial support, Amber found herself in a difficult situation. She realized the consequences of her choices and how the pursuit of fleeting happiness had led her to a life of problems and unhappiness.